Ex-girlfriend encounter. I'm walking out of the Hermes store on Madison Avenue after buying a $12,000 Birkin bag for Tiffany when I see her standing outside Bergdorf Goodman looking exactly like she did 3 years ago, except maybe 5 pounds heavier and with laugh lines around her eyes that weren't there when we were together. Madison Hartley. My ex-girlfriend from Colombia who actually knew me before I became who I am now. She's wearing a Burberry trench coat that probably cost her 2 months' salary at whatever non-profit organization she's pretending makes a difference in the world. Her hair is still that perfect shade of blonde that comes from expensive salons in the Upper East Side where her trust fund pays for monthly appointments that most people couldn't afford annually. She's talking on her phone and gesturing with her free hand the way she always did when she was explaining something she considered important to someone who probably doesn't give a shit about her opinion. Madison represents everything I used to think I wanted before I understood what I actually am. She's intelligent without being threatening. Attractive without being high maintenance. Wealthy enough to fit into my social circle but not wealthy enough to make me feel inadequate. She has political opinions that she considers sophisticated but are really just recycled talking points from whatever liberal media she consumes. She volunteers for causes that make her feel good about herself without requiring any real sacrifice or commitment. When we were dating, I actually thought I might marry her someday. She had all the right credentials and connections and family background. She went to the right schools and knew the right people and said the right things at dinner parties and charity events. She could have been the perfect wife for someone climbing the social and professional ladders in Manhattan's elite circles. But then I started making real money and gaining actual power, and I realized that Madison's type of conventional attractiveness and socially acceptable personality were limitations rather than assets. She would have held me back from achieving my full potential. She would have imposed moral constraints on my business activities and social relationships. She would have expected emotional availability and ethical behavior that would have interfered with optimal decision-making. Plus, she never really understood what I was capable of becoming. She saw me as just another ambitious finance guy who wanted to get rich and live well. She didn't recognize the fundamental differences between me and everyone else in our social circle. She thought I was playing the same game as everyone else instead of playing an entirely different game with much higher stakes and much more interesting rules. I could walk away before she notices me. Turn around and head toward Fifth Avenue and avoid this entire interaction. But I'm curious about what she's been doing for the past 3 years and whether she's figured out anything about who I really am. Plus, seeing her might be entertaining in a way that would make the rest of my afternoon more interesting. She ends her phone call and turns toward me before I can decide whether to approach her or disappear into the crowd of tourists and shoppers that populate this part of Manhattan during the lunch hour. Her eyes widen slightly when she recognizes me, and she smiles with what appears to be genuine pleasure rather than the fake social smile that most people use when encountering ex-boyfriends unexpectedly. "Preston," she says, walking toward me with that confident stride that always made her seem taller than her actual 5'6" height. What a surprise. "How are you?" She looks good. Not as good as Tiffany, but good in a different way that suggests stability and reliability rather than genetic perfection and pharmaceutical enhancement. Madison never needed Ozempic or cosmetic surgery or professional photography to look attractive. She had the kind of natural beauty that ages well and doesn't require constant maintenance and optimization. Madison, I say, producing the smile that I use for social interactions with people who knew me before I fully understood my own nature. "I'm doing very well. You look great." "Thank you," she says, apparently pleased by the compliment. "You look successful." "Very successful." She's referring to my outfit, which probably costs more than she makes in a month working at whatever do-gooder organization currently employs her idealistic energy and inherited wealth. The Brunello Cucinelli suit is $3,800. The shoes are Berluti at $2,200. The watch is the Patek Philippe Nautilus at $89,000. The total value of what I'm wearing could fund her salary for 2 years. Things have been going well, I tell her. How about you? What are you up to these days? I'm working at the Environmental Defense Fund, she says with the kind of earnest enthusiasm that suggests she believes her job actually matters for something other than providing wealthy liberals with tax-deductible opportunities to feel good about themselves. We're doing really important work on climate change policy and sustainable development initiatives. Climate change policy. Right. She's spending her days writing reports that no one reads and attending meetings that accomplish nothing while convincing herself that she's saving the planet from corporate greed and environmental destruction. Meanwhile, the actual environment continues deteriorating because the real causes of ecological collapse can't be addressed through non-profit activism and government regulation. That sounds very meaningful, I say, because engaging with her political delusions would require explaining economic and ecological realities that would destroy her sense of personal purpose and moral superiority. It really is, she agrees. I feel like I'm finally doing something that matters, you know? Using my privilege and education to make a positive difference in the world. Using her privilege. She's using her privilege to work at a job that pays $60,000 a year because her trust fund covers her living expenses and she doesn't need to generate actual income to maintain her lifestyle. She gets to feel morally superior to people like me who prioritize wealth accumulation over social causes because she doesn't need to worry about financial security or retirement planning. Are you still in finance? She asks, apparently assuming that I'm still working at the same entry-level position I had when we were dating 3 years ago. I'm a senior director at Morgan Stanley now, I tell her. Crypto derivatives and alternative investments. Her expression changes slightly when I mention my title and firm. She knows enough about finance to understand that senior director positions at major investment banks represent serious money and significant responsibility. She's probably calculating my approximate salary and wondering how much my net worth has increased since we broke up. Wow, she says. That's a big jump from where you were when we were together. I've been fortunate, I say, which is my modest way of acknowledging that I've made approximately $73 million through a combination of legitimate trading, insider information, market manipulation, and criminal fraud while maintaining complete social respectability and professional success. And are you still living in the same apartment? She asks, apparently curious about whether my lifestyle has changed proportionally to my career advancement. I bought a place in Hudson Yards, I tell her. Penthouse. Great views of the river. I don't mention that the apartment cost $12.8 million or that it's larger than most people's houses or that the monthly maintenance fees exceed her annual salary. I don't describe the custom Italian fixtures or the imported marble or the smart home technology that controls everything from lighting to climate to entertainment systems through voice commands and smartphone apps. Hudson Yards, she repeats. That's very impressive. She's trying to hide her surprise, but I can see that she's recalculating her assumptions about my current financial situation and social status. When we were dating, I was making maybe $200,000 a year and living in a one-bedroom rental on the Upper West Side. Now I'm obviously operating at a completely different economic level that puts me in the category of people she considers rich rather than just comfortable. Are you seeing anyone? She asks, which is either genuine curiosity about my personal life or an attempt to determine whether I'm available for potential reconciliation now that my financial situation has improved dramatically. I am, I tell her. Her name is Tiffany. She's an influencer. An influencer, Madison repeats, and I can hear the subtle disdain in her voice because people like Madison consider social media influence to be a frivolous and shallow career path compared to meaningful work like environmental activism and nonprofit management. She has almost 1 million followers, I explain. Lifestyle and wellness content. Very successful personal brand. What I don't mention is that Tiffany makes more money in a month than Madison makes in a year by posting pictures of her ass and promoting overpriced supplements to teenage girls with eating disorders and self-esteem issues. Tiffany's Instagram account generates more economic value than Madison's entire nonprofit organization while requiring approximately 1/10 the intellectual effort. That's modern, Madison says, apparently struggling to find a polite way to express her opinion about my choice in romantic partners. She's very beautiful, I add, because I know this will make Madison feel insecure about her own appearance and remind her that she chose idealistic career satisfaction over maintaining the kind of physical perfection that attracts successful men. I'm sure she is, Madison says, and now I can detect the slight edge in her voice that suggests she's beginning to feel defensive about her life choices and comparative success levels. We're standing outside one of the most expensive department stores in the world while pedestrians walk around us carrying shopping bags from luxury retailers that sell products most people will never be able to afford. The contrast between my obvious wealth and Madison's nonprofit salary is becoming more apparent with each exchange of information about our current situations. What about you? I ask. Anyone special in your life? I'm dating someone, she says. David. He's a public defender. A public descender. She's dating someone who makes maybe $50,000 a year defending criminals who can't afford real lawyers. Someone whose entire career is dedicated to helping people avoid the legal consequences of their poor decisions and antisocial behavior. Someone who chose idealistic service over financial success and social advancement. That sounds very noble, I tell her, because I know she interprets my wealth as moral compromise while her boyfriend's poverty represents ethical purity and social consciousness. He's doing really important work, she says, apparently feeling the need to justify her choice of romantic partner to someone whose lifestyle represents everything she claims to oppose. Criminal justice reform, defending people who can't afford adequate representation. Criminal justice reform. He's helping criminals avoid punishment for their crimes while convincing himself that the problem is systemic bias rather than individual choices and behavioral patterns. He's contributing to the breakdown of social order and public safety while maintaining his sense of moral superiority over people who actually generate wealth and create value. How long have you been together? I ask, genuinely curious about whether she's found happiness with someone whose values align with her political beliefs and social consciousness. About 8 months, she says. It's getting pretty serious. 8 months. She's been dating a public defender for 8 months while I've accumulated another $15 million in crypto gains and real estate appreciation. She's probably sharing a studio apartment in Brooklyn with someone who rides the subway and shops at Whole Foods with coupons while I'm flying private jets and eating at restaurants that require 2-month waiting lists. That's great, I tell her. I'm happy for you. I'm not happy for her. I'm fascinated by her capacity for self-deception and her ability to convince herself that moral purity compensates for financial mediocrity and social irrelevance. She chose ideology over opportunity and principles over prosperity, and now she's pretending that dating a public defender represents some kind of superior lifestyle choice compared to accumulating massive wealth and social status. So what brings you to this neighborhood? She asks, apparently wanting to change the subject from our respective romantic relationships to safer topics like shopping and leisure activities. Just picking up a gift, I say, gesturing toward the Hermes bag that cost more than her boyfriend makes in a month. My girlfriend's birthday is coming up. Madison's eyes flick toward the distinctive orange shopping bag and I can see her calculating the approximate cost of whatever I bought at Hermes. She knows enough about luxury goods to understand that anything from that store represents serious money. She's probably wondering what kind of person receives $12,000 handbags as casual birthday presents. She's very lucky, Madison says, and I can't tell whether she's being sincere or sarcastic. I like to treat her well, I say, which is my way of communicating that I have enough disposable income to spend more on accessories than most people spend on cars without affecting my overall financial situation. We're both silent for a moment while pedestrians flow around us and the afternoon sunlight reflects off the windows of expensive shops and restaurants. Madison is probably comparing her current life with what our life might have been like if we had stayed together and she had access to my current financial resources and social status. You've really done well for yourself, she says finally. I mean, really well. Thank you, I say. I've been focused on building something significant. Building something significant. Like a criminal enterprise that generates massive profits through market manipulation and regulatory violations while maintaining complete legal immunity and social respectability. Like a network of financial relationships that allow me to profit from other people's misfortune and economic desperation. Like a carefully constructed public persona that conceals my actual psychological profile and behavioral patterns. Do you ever think about what might have happened if we had stayed together? She asks, apparently unable to resist exploring the counterfactual scenario where she chose financial security over ideological purity. This is the question I've been waiting for. She wants to know whether I think our relationship could have survived my transformation from ambitious but conventional finance worker into whatever I've become now. She wants to understand whether my current success was possible while maintaining the kind of emotional availability and ethical constraints she expected from romantic partners. Sometimes, I tell her, which is technically true because I do sometimes think about how different my life would be if I had remained constrained by her moral expectations and social consciousness. I think we could have had something really special, she says, apparently convinced that our compatibility 3 years ago would have persisted despite the fundamental changes in my personality and priorities. Special. We could have had something special if I had remained the kind of person who cared about her opinions and feelings and moral judgments. If I had continued prioritizing relationship harmony over wealth accumulation and professional advancement. If I had never discovered what I was actually capable of achieving when freed from conventional ethical constraints. Maybe, I say, because telling her the truth would require explaining that she represents everything I needed to eliminate from my life in order to achieve my full potential. The truth is that Madison would have been a constant source of moral opposition and emotional drain. She would have questioned my business practices and trading strategies. She would have objected to my social relationships and lifestyle choices. She would have imposed limitations on my behavior that would have prevented me from developing the psychological capabilities necessary for optimal performance in competitive environments. I sometimes wonder what you would think of who I've become, she continues, apparently seeking some kind of validation or approval from someone whose success represents everything she claims to oppose. Who she's become. She's become someone who works for a non-profit organization that accomplishes nothing while convincing herself that moral purity matters more than actual results. Someone who dates idealistic losers because their poverty represents ethical superiority to wealth accumulation. Someone who chose social consciousness over financial security and now feels defensive about that choice when confronted with evidence of what she could have had instead. You seem happy, I tell her, because happiness is supposed to be more important than money or status or power according to people who can't achieve money or status or power. I am happy, she says, but there's something in her voice that suggests she's trying to convince herself as much as me. I feel like I'm making a difference. Like my work matters. Your work matters. She's writing grant applications and attending conferences and producing reports that no one reads while the actual environment continues deteriorating because the problems she thinks she's addressing can't be solved through nonprofit activism and government regulation. Her work matters exactly as much as every other form of charitable masturbation that allows wealthy people to feel good about themselves without addressing systemic causes of the problems they claim to care about. That's important, I say, because maintaining social politeness requires validating other people's delusions about the significance of their activities and choices. Do you feel like your work matters? She asks, apparently curious about whether accumulating massive wealth through financial manipulation provides the same sense of personal fulfillment as saving the environment through nonprofit management. My work matters more than anything she's ever done or ever will do. My work creates actual value and generates real results that can be measured objectively through profit and loss statements and portfolio performance metrics. My work influences global markets and affects economic conditions that determine the financial security of millions of people. My work has made me wealthy and powerful and socially relevant in ways that her charitable activities never could. I find it very fulfilling, I tell her, which is true because destroying other people's financial futures while accumulating massive personal wealth provides satisfaction that moral posturing and ideological purity can't match. I'm glad, she says, apparently accepting my response without probing deeper into what exactly I find fulfilling about crypto derivatives trading and alternative investment management. A group of tourists walks between us while taking pictures of the expensive storefronts and architectural details that make this neighborhood attractive to people who want to experience luxury consumption as a form of entertainment. Madison steps closer to me to avoid being separated by the crowd, and for a moment I can smell her perfume, which is the same fragrance she wore when we were dating. I should probably get going, she says, checking her phone for the time. I have a meeting back at the office. A meeting back at the office. She has a meeting with other nonprofit employees where they'll discuss fundraising strategies and policy initiatives that won't accomplish anything meaningful but will provide everyone involved with the sense that they're engaged in important work that justifies their salaries and professional existence. Of course, I say. It was really good seeing you again. You too, she says, and she seems to mean it. Maybe we could get coffee sometime and catch up properly. Coffee sometime. She wants to continue this conversation in a setting where she can ask more detailed questions about my current lifestyle and financial situation. She wants to explore whether there might be opportunities for reconciliation now that my economic status has improved dramatically. She wants to determine whether I've maintained enough of my previous personality to be compatible with her moral expectations and relationship requirements. That could be nice, I tell her, because rejecting the suggestion outright would seem unnecessarily hostile and might make her suspicious about my reasons for avoiding extended contact. Great, she says, pulling out her phone. What's your number? I think I deleted it after we broke up. She deleted my number after we broke up because she wanted to avoid the temptation of contacting me during weak moments when she questioned her decision to end our relationship. Now she wants my number again because seeing my obvious success has made her reconsider whether choosing ideological purity over financial security was actually the right decision. I give her my number and she enters it into her contacts while explaining that she'll text me sometime next week to arrange a coffee meeting that will allow us to have a more substantial conversation about our respective life paths and current situations. She seems genuinely pleased about the prospect of re-establishing contact with someone from her past who has achieved significant professional success. I really am happy for you, she says before we part ways. You deserve all the success you've achieved. I deserve all the success I've achieved. She has no idea what I've done to achieve this success or what I'm capable of doing to maintain and expand it. She thinks I deserve my wealth because she assumes I earned it through legitimate business activities and superior performance in competitive markets. She doesn't understand that deserving has nothing to do with it and that success comes from understanding what other people won't do and then doing exactly those things without moral hesitation or ethical constraints. Thank you, I tell her. That means a lot coming from you. It doesn't mean anything coming from her. Her opinion about whether I deserve my success is completely irrelevant because she lacks the intellectual framework to understand how wealth is actually created and accumulated in contemporary financial markets. She believes in meritocracy and fair play and ethical business practices because she's never operated at levels where those concepts become meaningless abstractions. We say goodbye and she walks toward the subway station while I continue toward my office where I have 3 hours of actual productive work before the markets close. As I watch her disappear into the crowd of pedestrians, I think about how completely she represents everything I needed to eliminate from my life in order to become who I am now. Madison chose moral purity over practical success. She prioritized social consciousness over financial security. She selected romantic partners based on ethical compatibility rather than genetic quality or resource provision capability. She dedicated her career to causes that make her feel good about herself rather than activities that generate measurable results and economic value. And now she's 32 years old with a net worth of maybe $50,000 dating a public defender who will never be able to provide her with the lifestyle she grew up expecting. She's convinced herself that happiness matters more than money while secretly wondering what her life would be like if she had made different choices about career and relationships. The encounter was more entertaining than I expected because it provided concrete evidence of how much my life has improved since eliminating people like her from my social environment. 3 years ago, I was earning modest professional salaries and dating women who imposed moral constraints on my behavior and career decisions. Now I'm worth $73 million and dating someone who enhances rather than limits my social status and personal brand. Madison represents the path I didn't take. The conventional success that comes from following social expectations and ethical guidelines that prevent most people from achieving their full potential. She chose to remain constrained by ideological beliefs and moral principles that made her feel good about herself while ensuring that she would never accomplish anything significant or accumulate any real power. I chose differently. I chose to understand what successful people actually do rather than what they claim to do. I chose to prioritize results over methods and outcomes over intentions. I chose to become someone who creates value for himself rather than someone who creates feelings of moral superiority for other people. And the results speak for themselves. I'm wealthy and powerful and socially relevant while she's poor and idealistic and completely irrelevant to anyone who matters for anything important. I'm dating someone who enhances my status while she's dating someone who confirms her moral superiority. I'm building something significant while she's participating in collective delusions about social change and environmental activism. But seeing her again reminded me of something important about maintaining social camouflage and psychological cover. People like Madison represent the conventional moral framework that most people use to evaluate behavior and success. They provide useful reference points for understanding how to appear normal and acceptable to audiences who might otherwise become suspicious about motivations and methods. I should text her next week and arrange that coffee meeting. Not because I'm interested in rekindling our relationship or maintaining friendship, but because staying connected to people from my previous life helps maintain the illusion that I'm still fundamentally the same person I was before I understood what I was actually capable of becoming. Plus, it might be interesting to learn more about her current situation and whether she's actually as happy as she claims to be with her choices about career and relationships. People like Madison often develop doubts about their ideological commitments when confronted with evidence of what they could have achieved through different priorities and decision-making frameworks. And if those doubts become strong enough, she might be willing to compromise some of her moral principles in exchange for access to the lifestyle and financial security that I could provide, which could create interesting opportunities for psychological experimentation and behavioral analysis. But that's probably thinking too far ahead. For now, it's enough to know that I made the right choices about eliminating moral constraints and ideological limitations from my decision-making processes. Madison's life represents everything I avoided by choosing practical success over ethical purity. And I've never been happier with any decision I've ever made.